cloudy, isn't it?
Yeah. This is Charles Fort. Oh, dear. So I think it's up there, isn't it? Over that bit over there, we've got to go for the mead. I think. Looks like it's free, I suppose.
It's weird because it said about booking online.
Huh. Mid-March to October. Huh.
Yeah, that's nice. Well, it's got prices there, look.
Where? Oh.
Adult, €5.
Yeah, we don't know, we're busy.
Oh, mind it says reception there, let's say.
Well, if not, we can just get a video of the place outside. Oh, there's a marriage on today. A marriage. Yeah, 24th of June at 3 p.m. Oh, it'll be shortly, won't it?
Courtney Beer and Ben McCormick. Some 3 o'clock now.
Ooh, might be that CA.
I think so. You know what? I might put you on there, and you can just ring them and say, "Look, Chucks, can you tell me exactly how many
Might be
phones you
that
have?" Because I'd say,
CA.
you know. All right,
It's got a good bridge, isn't it?
okay.
Yeah. Lower the back.
What rain you in?
No, I'm just going to get the car. Just doing off this afternoon.
It's even better than I thought. It's even better than I thought.
Yeah. Well, this bridge, it's quite impressive from the
Yeah.
And through recycling form, they put the stonework for the castle is probably put into the walls, so the castle is in the outer walls. That's where probably all over the place. The fort itself dates back to 1678. They started building it that year basically, and they completed the original fort in 1682. So 4 years of construction to get to the original basic structure of the outer walls and the moat, and some inner basic buildings as well. As regards the wall itself, you have an outer stone wall and you have an inner earthen bank, which earth came from the bank, from the moat. When they dug the moat, they put it into the bank here. Inner stone wall as well, and the wall goes right on the fort, and that's pretty much the original wall that's still standing today. It's about 350 years old. It's still there. Most of it is still there to this day, as are the bastions as well. And outside the fort then we have a moat which you walked over. You came over the footbridge and you walked over the moat. And when I say moat, you often think of, we're going away shortly, they'll finish the day in hopefully a few minutes. They're the works team. We're guides, they're the works team, so they make the noise. We just do the job. But basically the moat, you think of castles and drawbridges and lakes and shining armour and flooded area, but that moat was never flooded with water. That was always a dry moat. For two reasons. Now, when I say not flooded with water, it rains around quite a lot, so it will get wet and mucky easily enough, but they didn't put water into it. For two reasons. The first reason is because the fort is sloped downhill and the water would just go into the harbour. And the more practical reason is if you put water into that moat, you trap everybody in here inside the fort. They're trapped inside the fort. The guys who arrive to attack them just wait outside. Stuck inside looking out at them and being starved and siege and all the rest of it. So it would be clever to flood the moat and trap yourself, so they didn't. And that's not the only exit or entrance that you came in there. There were two more as well. That's the main gateway. That has pretty much where it has always been. There are two small exits, entrances, arches, doorways or gateways called sally ports, very small ones. And there's one down there behind that engine shed in the corner of the smoking shed out there. There's one through the back on that side, and there's another one on the far side over as well. And they were used by the defenders to rush out quickly and defend the fort outside as well. And they could rush back in to those sally ports of the hedge as well. They could come back in and go out as they needed to. And there were barricades behind them and sentries and all that kind of thing. So the attackers could just rush into through these little gates. They were defended as well. So they had three options to come in and out basically. And the inside of the fort then, all these buildings were here at some stage or other, but they weren't all here at the same time. For example, this is one of the earliest structures, and that's that wall here, plaster traverse wall, one of the early structures, that's it there. I'll explain what that was in a second when I go down there closer to it to you. But just to say, it's one of the early structures, and this is one of the more recent. Now when I say more recent, you're talking about 1750s, so it's not that recent, but it's newer than this. This is an infantry barracks, and that's that building here. So that you've been built here and constructed, demolished and changed over the centuries constantly. And just because they're on this plan doesn't mean they're in this plan these days. The fire engine house, which kids love because there's a fire engine in there. That's it down there, the small kind of shed house there. But the vehicle shed next to it, that's gone. It's not there anymore. So just because it's here doesn't mean it's here anymore. But they were all here at some stage. And another thing I should mention as well, Stuart, before we go, because some people find this funny. Women's quarters. There was no women's quarters here, but there were married quarters, and quite a few of them dotted around the fort. That's a mistake by the guy who created the mosaic. What he did was design the mosaic, and he got initials W-O, and he thought they were W-K. So he thought, women's quarters. It was actually warrant officers. Like F-O's that's field officers, should be W-O warrant officers. So that got lost in translation. It's just a little mistake, but it's pretty accurate otherwise. So, what I'm going to do next, if you come with me, is I'm going to go, and those people are standing over there actually, close enough to where they are. And I'm going to mention about the ladies who lived in the fort, and they had a tough time of it. They had to work for their living, and Mayor of the Battle Kinsale briefly mentioned that too. And just move around and have a circle. Happy enough to come with me? Great.
With the head offices in there, isn't it? There's a wedding party on down there. Go on, be brave. No. That's quite nice. It's a lovely fort, this. It was, it was.
And having park up as well, even better.
Yeah, and a free park up. Yeah. There's a lighthouse over there, look. Huh. Oh, we've got two in one. We've got two birds in one stone. Two stones in one bird. No. Oi. Oh.
And this would be here for a reason. Anyway, so that would help to have that openness as well. So that's just a gap to let the air circulate between the building and the jammed outer wall. Simple engineering to keep them slightly healthier. And this was the married quarters where 6% of the soldiers were trying to marry. 6 in every 100 could marry if they got permission from the commanding officer. Sergeants, for example, people who were in good behaviour for a while in the army, that kind of thing. They lived here with their wives, the guys who were looking enough to become married, in marital beds, which is common enough, it's not that unusual. But they shared the rooms with soldiers, other soldiers, unmarried ones, because there was a shortage of accommodation, and that's just what they did. And the soldiers shared beds. The marital couple had their own bed at all times, but and their privacy was a cloth curtain or partition between them and the other soldiers. And I think they changed to close the bed sheets once every 3 months, thereabouts. So it was tough, but much tougher for people outside the walls, because out there you had a lot of peasants, one-rooms, cottages, which we call bahans, sodden turf roofs, badly constructed, people with no money, no jobs, no hope, no nothing really, famines, that kind of a thing. So it was tough in here, but tough outside for most people. So they probably didn't complain too much. And the wives here didn't stay for free, they had to earn their keep. They weren't paid, but they had to wash and clean, that kind of a thing. And can you see the metal structure over there? That's the remains of a clothes line. And there were various other ones dotted around, so they'd spend their day washing, cleaning, that kind of a thing. Walking over there. That was the Aboriginal house next to it. The married couple were taking photographs, they probably don't know what it is or what it was for. And that was their lot, but some of the ladies here had quite a good time. They didn't all have to work like that. The officers' wives some had a great time. And I'd explain at the end, but they got up to it. So the battle of Kinsale, do you want to learn? I'll mention it very quickly to you. Not in huge detail because it's very messy and it's not straightforward, even though people like to say that it is. People kind of tell you that it's the Spanish with the Irish fighting the English. That's not true whatsoever. That's only part of the tale. 1601 is the year, 1601. There was a Spanish flag outside before he came in. That's commemorating the 400th anniversary of that particular incident. So 1601 is winter time, and 3,500 Spanish troops come in here on ships. There were thousands more didn't come because the bad weather drove them back to Spain, basically. And 500 more landed on the Cork coast further west of here as well. So the 3,500 Spanish who came in here had meant to sail much further up the country, because the sympathetic Irish, their cause were much further north than here. O'Donnell, O'Neill, up in Ulster, say, much further north. But they came here because the weather was bad and storms, that kind of thing. And they landed here. And their Irish supporters had to come into the country to meet them, basically. It took weeks to get here. They got some support from local Irish people, but not a huge amount, because there was a rebellion down here 20 years earlier, and the northern comrades didn't help the Irish down here with the rebellion, so they returned the favour by not helping them. And as well as that, you had some of the Irish here supported the English because just seasonal purposes, and other Irish people pretended to support the English forces, but when they came to a battle and a fight, they kind of just made a half-hearted effort and just ran off. So it's very messy. Anyway, the Spanish were here. They got surrounded by the English forces quite quickly, and their Irish compatriots came from the north of Ireland. Eventually made it down. There was a battle behind the town, and the English won the day easily enough. And then they told the Spanish basically to get out of Kinsale or you never leave. And the Spanish were quite happy to leave because it was cold, it was winter, didn't like the weather, they were getting sick, dying from disease, and being picked off and all this kind of thing. So they sailed out of the harbour and never came back again. The English got a big fright from this. They weren't happy about this invasionary force, so they said we have to do something about it. And they built a fort across the harbour on the other side. The year after, they started building it, called James's Fort. And you can actually see it just about now with the fog. You see the big white 3-story building up there on the hill? Just to the left, it looks like a castle, an old ruined stone building over there. Just next to it on the left, that's James's Fort. That was started in 1602, the year after the Battle of Kinsale, and finished by about 1604. And then this fort was built 8 years later, and then you had 130 cannons. In 2 forts, protection the harbour, and they had 2 booms on occasion. They had a hemp cable from over there to the side of the harbour, and another occasion they had 6 ships on the line linked with metal, all the English forces. So there was never invasion after the one time. They did happen 1601. Never happened again for that reason, because if you came and invaded by sea, you were crazy. It didn't happen, but the folk did. Never attacked once, and then only when it was the end. You can advocate for silly things. So, the gunpowder store, the gunpowder room, call it what you want, where the wedding was 20 minutes ago, the slated roof building, that's the gunpowder store. The most dangerous building in the entire fort. Volatile gunpowder, it could explode as a friction spark, whatever, it would just take off. Extremely dangerous. And the guys who worked there wore white smocks, like ladies' mattresses, no pockets, no jewelry, nothing to cause any friction or sparks, because they wouldn't last more than 60 seconds, but seconds if it blew, that's the end of it. And I mentioned the blast wall being one of the oldest buildings, structures in the fort. Can you see the big thick wall there? That's the blast wall, just there. That was put there. If that gunpowder room did explode, that hopefully contained the shock wave of the explosion to some extent. And the officers lived over here on the site, very properly of this fort. And about the time it fell, the attack fell.
And the old horse and cart must be shaken to the bone. Oh, well. I thought we'd come in, right?
Yeah.
Ah. It's a bit misty out there. Oh, that would have been a good view. Have to look at that building.
Because of its location and harbour, Kinsale was to play a pivotal role in some of the most important events of Irish history during this time. Hugh O'Neill, a direct descendant of ancient Irish high kings and royally appointed Earl of Tyrone, was educated at the court of Queen Elizabeth, and he was the man that threatened the might of the English throne. O'Neill joined forces with Hugh O'Donnell, and together they fought a defensive war against the English, with considerable success. O'Neill's campaign successes were fought guerrilla style, under cover of the bogs and woods. After the Irish victory at the Battle of the Yellow Ford, the struggle intensified, and when Lord Mountjoy arrived in Ireland with extra troops, it became clear to Hugh O'Neill that foreign help was now essential to his success. The Spanish saw Ireland as a fellow Catholic nation, strategically positioned beside Protestant England. A Spanish fleet with 3,400 troops set sail for Ireland to help the Irish forces. Unfortunately for O'Neill, the Spanish fleet landed at Kinsale, the nearest point to Spain, while his armies were in Ulster. The Spaniards managed to occupy the small tower here, at what was then Castle Park, later Jamesfort, and the castle at Ringcurran, where Charlesfort now stands. The English army reached Cork, hoping to defeat the Spaniards before O'Neill arrived. The Spanish lost Castle Park and Ringcurran, but managed to hold Kinsale town. O'Neill knew that the long trek from Ulster to Cork in midwinter would weary his troops, but he had little choice. And after long days of marching, his army reached County Cork and besieged the English. However, O'Neill was betrayed. The English were made aware of his army's approach and tactics. And Kinsale was not the Yellow Ford. Mountjoy's forces, out in the open and with superior firepower, outfought and dispersed the Irish, who retreated, bloodied and battered, to Ulster. It was the end of O'Neill and O'Donnell's long struggle. They left Ireland soon afterwards in what was to become known as the Flight of the Earls. The Battle of Kinsale broke the Irish rebellion. O'Neill had failed, and that failure finally meant the end of the power of the Gaelic chieftains in Ireland. Following the Battle of Kinsale, the defence of Kinsale Harbour became an urgent priority. In 1602, construction began on Jamesfort, located on the site of Castle Park. Jamesfort was a star-shaped fort with 5 bastions. However, as with so many Irish fortifications, it was neglected in times of peace. In 1667, a second key fortification was built opposite Jamesfort, on the site of Ringcurran Castle. First, an earthwork fortification was built, which was later replaced with a permanent structure, which became known as Charlesfort, after Charles II. William Robinson, architect of the Royal Hospital in Dublin, adopted Vauban's classic fort design to suit the irregular slope of the site. Charlesfort is a classic example of a star-shaped fort and has 5 bastions. From the sea, it is indeed an intimidating structure, looming large before an approaching enemy. In 1685, while inspecting army sites, Captain Thomas Phillips reported that, although ideal as a coastal defence fortification, Charlesfort was overlooked by higher ground inland, and this meant that it was vulnerable to attack from ground forces. This was to prove its downfall the following decade. Charlesfort was intended to be built in 2 parts, one part on top of the hill and the other on the coast where it now stands. But unfortunately, the second part was never constructed.
Just come up there. So we're in Charlesfort. Guardhouse.
Private Robert Joseph McCarthy here, 99th Regiment of Her Majesty's British Army, born 1831. I know Charlesford well. I was lucky enough to do my training here, as a lot of the Irish get sent off to England as soon as they sign up. They like to send people away from home. Helps keep their minds on their duties. But demand was high here when I was young, so here is where I started. There were a lot of us Irish in the British Army when I joined. Sometimes there were more of us than there were of them. The British Army used to have a ban on Catholics, but now they'll take anyone they can get. There's no conscription here. We joined because there weren't many other ways to make a living, especially just after the great hunger of the famine. My brothers joined the army too. They're dead now. The officers do the recruiting here. They're not too bothered what sort they get. They just want to make up the numbers. The officer I first served under barely looked at me when I signed up, which was just as well because I was underage. He just took me in, gave me a uniform, showed me my quarters, and that was it. I was a soldier. Peacetime is worse than war. War means travel and adventure. Peace means long, hard training sessions. I was trained under the 1792 regulations.
Big old guns, isn't they? Oh, passing Firelock. And then the Lee Enfield. And the Lee Enfield Mark III. Yeah. Gunpowder. And musket balls. Yes, we're looking at Kinsale Harbour at about 7 o'clock in the morning. Just on our way down to do the parking near the lower road parking. Just down there somewhere. And that's where we stayed up there.